Everybody has an opinion as to how you gained all that extra weight or why you can't lose weight despite your best efforts. But in this video, I'll uncover one of the #1 causes of weight gain that you probably never thought of. Hey Wellness Warrior, I'm Dr. Zyrowski, and when it comes to the topic of weight gain or weight loss, it's very difficult to tell fact from fiction. But the reality is that if you want to be on the right path, you have to be able to understand which way to navigate so that you can lose the weight and of course have the body that you want and take control of your health. So let's go ahead and dive right in and talk about one of the first things that most people blame as to why you are suffering from some weight problems. We're going to go through many of them, but then I'll uncover the worst one that you really have to be careful for. And the first one we're going to discuss is genetics, okay? We've been taught for so many years that your genetics will predetermine whether or not you will have weight issues as you get older. And the reality is that's kind of an old science. We know that your genetics obviously play a huge role in your overall health, but your genetics aren't going to make you fat. It was thought that if your parents were fat, well, then you would be fat. But the reality is, and what we now know, is that if your parents were obese and struggling with weight their whole life, they probably had some pretty bad lifestyle habits. You know, maybe they didn't work out, they probably ate a lot of sugar, carbohydrates, just didn't really take care of their health really well. Unfortunately, they taught you those same traits as a child, and then you brought that into adulthood with you, and then you're suffering from the same chronic conditions or diseases they suffered from, but also you are suffering with the inability to keep your weight under control simply because you just don't really understand how to get control of the situation. And so it really comes down to just really bad habits that you learned as a child from your parents. So it really didn't have a lot to do with genetics. So the amount of weight loss and weight gain issues that come connected with genetics is very few and far between. So it's not something that you should hang your hat on and go, oh, you know what? It's genetics, there's nothing I can do. That's not gonna be the case, okay? Now, the next big thing that we see, especially in healthcare today, is they say, well, the big problem with someone who's gaining a lot of weight or can't lose the weight, it all has to do with two hormones, insulin and leptin. Now, insulin's a fat storage hormone. Leptin is a hormone that tells you that you're full and to stop eating, okay? Now, when you have insulin resistance, you're in a situation where your body can't control its blood sugar properly. And when you have leptin resistance, you're never told to stop eating, okay? Now, the problem with this theory that these two hormones are the major factor and what we should do is just create a magic pill that just pushes them in the right direction is that idea is wrong, because at the root cause of leptin and insulin resistance is a very poor lifestyle, okay? So leptin and insulin resistance is actually way downstream. So you had to have that poor lifestyle first that caused these hormones to go out of whack, and now you have a real problem. So still, we shouldn't really be focusing on that as the main cause of weight gain, right? We should focus on the actual poor lifestyle. That would be the main cause of the weight gain. So we don't want to focus downstream. Now, the next thing that we want to look at is medications, okay? Now, do I think medications are a real problem when it comes to weight gain? Yeah, I think they definitely are a little bit of a concern because most people are taking medications and they don't know how it actually affects their hormones, their weight, or their inability to lose weight. So if you take, for instance, like antidepressants, antipsychotics, some of the diabetic medications, and so many more medications, they actually do have an impact on your ability to lose weight and even have an impact on hormones like leptin to tell you to stop eating, right? They might actually cause some issues there. And so you might say to yourself, well, medications, oh, big deal. Well, it is a big deal simply because there's so many people on them, right? It's estimated that 55% of people are taking 4 or more prescription drugs and 39% of people are taking 5 or more prescription drugs. And if you look at the increase in medication use since 1960, it's increased over 55 times, okay? So medications are a big deal. And if you're someone who's on a medication, you should talk to your doctor and say, hey, look, how does this affect my weight gain or my weight loss? So I do think this is a factor we should pay attention to because we're going through these different factors. Which ones are legit and which ones aren't? And we want to know. So medication, I do think, is one. Now, another big theory is the problem is food availability, okay? Now, do I think food availability is a little bit of an issue? And I'd say yes, okay? And the reason for this being an issue is because it causes you to want to graze all day, right? And this is why intermittent fasting is so powerful, because you literally take a section of your day and you say, I am not eating during these hours. You kind of just cut yourself off, and then you don't have all the temptation and the pressure to eat, right? Because this is going to be really powerful for taking control of those hormones like leptin and insulin. But if you're, on the contrary, just grazing all day, then you are constantly spiking your blood sugar, and it makes it very difficult to lose weight. So food availability is a little bit of an issue, but still not the worst, okay? We're gonna get to the worst, but food availability isn't there. Now, the next big topic of discussion as to why you're gaining so much weight and can't lose it is because of the aggressive marketing that these food companies use. And I do think this is definitely an area of concern because many of the food labels are very deceiving and often make you think that you're buying something that's healthy when in fact it's not. So I think that this is something that we definitely could do better on as a society. There's different countries around the world that do not allow aggressive food marketing like this, but I know that in the United States it is allowed, and it sends a lot of people down the wrong path and making food choices. So I think we could definitely put that as a potential problem. Next topic is sugar, okay? Now, is sugar a major issue when it comes to obesity and losing weight? And the answer is absolutely, okay? Now, one of the reasons I don't say that this is the worst one is because it's pretty self-evident when you're consuming a lot of sugar. Like, most people know that they're doing it. Now, it doesn't help that sugar is literally in everything, and there's over 150 different names that sugar can actually fall under. That's not very easy to determine if you're reading food labels, but the thing is about sugar is that we know it's bad for us. And if we're consuming sugar, it's about impossible to start losing weight when you are priming that insulin pump and leading yourself down the path of insulin resistance. So sugar is definitely a huge factor, but it's not the worst because you know it's happening. You know you're consuming it. If you're drinking soda, you know you're consuming a lot of sugar. Now, next topic is misinformation, okay? So many people are trying to lose weight, but misinformation's out there and it's causing them to have a lot of problems. And I think this is definitely a concern, and it probably will be for a very long time. I mean, I think of growing up when my mom would follow these really low-fat diets all the time, and you know, they believed if you were consuming fat, that meant you were gonna be fat, right? So everybody was eating low fat, and there's still a lot of these fads that have happened throughout the years that many people are still holding on to. Now, I think one of the great things about today is the internet, and you have videos like this, and you have the ability to have so much information at your fingertips versus back in the day where the only information you got was from resources like maybe the American Heart Association and many of these different organizations that are just pay-to-play operations and giving you really bad advice. And so that's the good news, is we have access to good information, but there's still a lot of misinformation out there. So you got to be aware of that, but do your homework and always look to try to find the best resources, and then once you find them and you know you can trust them, stick to them. Now, food addictions is another topic of discussion. Is this a big reason as to why you can't lose weight or you're having weight gain issues? And I think that food addictions definitely is a real problem. You know, when I was taking an addictionology course, one of the things that was very interesting is that when I went into it, I thought people who have addictions are people who are alcoholics or they're addicted to drugs or things of that nature. But the reality is we all have addictions, right? Whether you look at sugar, coffee, or cigarettes, or eating, whatever it is, addictions exist in so many different ways. And I think that we don't put enough emphasis on realizing that we have addictions to certain foods. And so just realizing it, doing a little bit of self-analysis, and then maybe changing your diet a little bit to help with this is going to be really good. I mean, it's one of the reasons that so many people have a very hard time eating in a calorie deficit, because they're just addicted to eating a lot of food, maybe big portions, whatever. So think of that and think of how you could curb that a little bit and start eating less. Now we get to the number one worst cause of weight gain, and that is artificial junk foods. Whether you're talking of dyes, artificial flavors, hydrogenated oils, corn syrup, white bread, the list goes on forever and ever. One of the huge problems that we have is a whole bunch of food in grocery stores that are engineered with ingredients that are synthetic, made in a lab, but they're designed to taste good. They're designed to make you come back for more. They are designed to make you addicted. And the reality is they work, and they work very well. And unfortunately, these foods aren't designed to be in your body, and they cause a lot of health problems for you. And when you look at these engineered junk foods, we can correlate them with every single topic that we talked about. These engineered junk foods are going to drive inflammation. They're going to turn on bad genes that you don't want on in your body that could lead to potential obesity issues. They are going to drive inflammation, which is going to cause insulin resistance and leptin resistance. We already mentioned the ingredients will make you addicted. We also have to look at the fact that it's going to lead to overeating. And then not to mention all the different fancy food labels out there are convincing you that you should be eating these foods when you should not. So these artificial junk foods are allowed in places like the United States. If you look at a food that's made in the United States, and let's just say a junk food, let's take Oreo cookies, for instance. If you look at the ingredients that are allowed in the United States versus the ingredients that are allowed in a place like Australia, it's literally two different foods, because in Australia, they do not allow all the fake synthetic ingredients, whereas they do in the United States, in order to drive down cost and also make these foods cheap and addictive to you. So we want to make sure that we are always avoiding these artificial junk foods, because it's not just the fact that they're high calorie and there's some bad ingredients in it. It's far deeper than that. What it does to your physiology over time and driving inflammation and causing weight gain are things that you'll suffer from for years and years to come if you do not remove this stuff from your diet. So whenever making your food choices in the future, make sure that you're sticking to whole foods. Make sure that it's a food that you understand and it comes from nature, and those are the foods that you should be eating. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll really like this one next.